Okay, we join in from where we stopped, gentlemen and lady. And if I can draw you just a little back, in 1970, having already acquired a driving license, as I explained, because I wanted it for a salesmanship job. In 1970, my elder brother got married. Incidentally, we had gotten our second born child, a daughter, on 1st May 1970. And my elder brother's wedding was scheduled for 1st May. Sorry, 1st May. Yes, 1st May 1970. We got our daughter on 5th, 5 days thereafter. So, during that time, although I had acquired my driving license in 1969, I had had no chance of driving a vehicle alone, though I would say I was a qualified driver, having been in driving school for continuous 1.5 years. So during the wedding of my brother is the first day I drove a vehicle alone. He used to have a vehicle, a Volkswagen, and I was assigned that vehicle to drive during the wedding. Therefore, I drove that vehicle alone the whole day, from early morning up to the evening. The wedding took place in Holy Family Basilica in the center, at the center of Nairobi City. The reception took place in Woodley area, the then known as Woodley School, Girls School, currently Moi Girls. The matron of the area, who was friendly to my brother and the wife, afforded them the place. Therefore, that's where the reception was. They were living in Moi Estate in Langata, which is near Otiende, and was both built just after Otiende in 1968. So that's the first time I drove alone. I didn't have my own vehicle. We already were in Kariobangi South, an isolated area, and due to the standard of the inhabitants, those who had purchased those houses were rather a low class. As you understand, we were depositing 900 shillings. The houses were one single room, single bedroom. So they were for those who were in the low class. And therefore, to have a vehicle there, it would be incongruent with the rest of the society. So I had to leave the vehicle back to my brother's house in Moi Otiende area, and then go back to Kariobangi South. I didn't have my own vehicle until now. I joined immigration in 1972, and in 1974, by God's grace, I had saved a little to buy my own vehicle. I didn't want to go for government loan, though it was available. But if I went for the government vehicle, there was a restriction that I had to buy a vehicle of a certain class, a certain age, and therefore it would be of an amount that I did not want to spend. I didn't want to incur a big expense that will strain me in paying back. And therefore, I decided to try my savings and maybe borrow here and there where I would pay myself without involving myself in a loan from the employer. I did not want to get so much attached to my employment in terms of the loans and this and that. I didn't want them to know my private part. And therefore, I had saved a little, and due to the good relationship I had with the people in the bank, those I left in the bank, and my contemporaries were already in positions, so I could borrow up to about 2,000 or less. And therefore, I managed to raise 4,000, and that's what I paid for the first car. It was a Volkswagen KKG 150. I still vividly remember that's my first car I drove. 1974, yes. And by grace of God, since that time, I have not stayed without a vehicle.
What was the price of the vehicle?
It was 4,000 shillings.
Was that money that you had saved?
I had saved about 3,000, and I'd borrowed about 2,000 from the bank where I had used to work and had influence. My accounts were still there, so very easy terms. And therefore, I raised the amount and a little more for the expenses. I was still having a family, so I kept that vehicle. It was a good vehicle. I kept it to the break here and there, but it taught me how to handle a vehicle, an old vehicle. Yes. Many of my contemporaries and colleagues, as I have always emphasized, were younger, much younger than I am. So they had a lot of time to have fun, and they were not hurrying to get married like me. And therefore, they wanted a fancy vehicle. They would not go for that one. In fact, some of them used to make fun of me, because sometimes my vehicle would stall. I open it up and try pulling the petrol with mouth, and they would say, in a sarcastic manner, trying to ridicule me in front of others, especially in a social drinking place. Then they asked, Sayo, have you stopped saving petrol? Umewacha kufuta petroli? And then I would feel insulted, and I tell them off. That means when it's stalled, it is a carburetor. You try to pull that and do that, and then they would. And they were saying that because they had bought newer vehicles through the loan, government loan, which I avoided. But by God's grace, I continued until I could buy a better one now and then. And as I said earlier, my children, our first child was about 5 years. So all my children went to school. Those who went to school requiring a vehicle used my vehicle. And I have always driven since to date by grace of God. I was still banking with I had opened a new bank with a new account with the Barclays, which I had closed when I left them. I went to KCB, but when I lost the job and I could not get a job even with the KCB, I decided to go back to the Barclays. For one, that there were about 2 or 3 branches of Barclays in Nairobi town, and I knew almost everybody else. They used to be my colleagues. Some of them had risen through the ranks and they were in supervisory or assistant managerial positions. I commanded a bit of respect with them socially, and they would do anything to help me, and then they would like me to still continue with them in a company, and I enjoyed their companies. Therefore, it was easy through these people. Some of them had authority to give a loan of about 5,000 or things like that with easy terms, and they would tell me the shortcuts to take. And since they were so free with me, and I was also not a stranger with the bank, I knew these terms. So we would get it freely, not because I qualified. As far as my income was concerned, we would inflate it. I would say I'm getting other side hustles, income from this and that. And they knew I would, because there are times when I was operating through the city market. This is broking, people bringing in cargo from up country, and I would get money. So they believed I would, and I would bank whatever little I had excess. So I didn't have problem in paying it, although I had to tax myself, but it was manageable. That is actually the full amount before taxation. So after taxation, it will remain about 12 for them like that. Oh yes, without boasting, I was in a class that almost knew Nairobi and knew what is where. I knew who would do a Volkswagen. There was a garage in near Kariako of somebody who was like our cherry was dealing with them, and he was very good with them. So we knew where to take it and how to get this. There were some there were some shops in along Kirinyaga Road. It was Grogan Road then, who were selling these parts, and you would get them always available at an affordable price, because people were few and the vehicles were few. It was not a problem. What it wasn't. I was disciplined, and I liked serving people. So I made friends out of this. I served, I went for trainings, and I did my first term in employment with the immigration at the airport. It was then Embakasi Airport, which today is known as Old Airport, where there is where it is occupied by the Kenya Army, I think so. Yeah, that's where we were up to 1970, 74, 75. when we moved, when we moved to the new airport. The new airport started being built and prepared during the time of colonial times. Those people who were detained, most of them were brought there to work in the building and preparing the grounds for the new airport. And it took quite a long time, so it was getting ready about 73, 74. And then that's when we moved in. Sorry. So my permanent station of work, I would say, after employment in immigration, was Jomo Kenyatta Airport. And therefore I got more involved and more informed about the travelers and all that. It was then managed by the East African community. And Kenya happened to be the one that was in charge of the aircrafts and the airports. And therefore we are in the headquarters of the East African community as far as the transport is concerned and the airline is concerned. They wanted to try and compete with the European airlines, which had already started which were coming to Nairobi now in the international airport. There were quite a number of them which had applied for rights to land, and they were granted. And therefore, the East African airline, was called as East African Airways, was feeling threatened. Therefore, they hired or bought newer aircrafts and more powerful ones, and wanted to compete with the international and fully established airlines. And therefore, those of us who are working with the immigration were asked to give them an incentive. And the incentive was that we would be, a few of us, we would be selected to be flying to the destination our flights went to, with the members of our crew of the airline, enjoying the terms and conditions we are taken care of, and we serve and give the service to the travelers in the aircraft. They boarded, and those who are to come back, we would clear them and give them all the services they required in the aircraft. As soon as the flight landed, they were already set and they would walk free. And that would give them an advantage to the other aircraft whose passengers would line up for the clearance at the airport. And we did that up to 1977, when the East African community broke, and that service did not continue. So I was advantaged in that I took a number of those trips, and they gave me an exposure to the international community, international airport, and international traveling, which gave me an eye-opener. Yes. So we continued in the airport until 1978, when I was transferred to Moi Airport, which was built In 1978 is when our first founder president of the independent Kenya, Mzee Jomo Kenyatta, passed on. And after that, I had a few problems with the incoming government, in that there are a few of us who had joined the Union of Civil Servants, which was a large organization. It was led by one Kimani Wanyoike, and it has spread the world over as an organization that took care of the civil servants. I became a member, and he decided to have a company within the insurance thing, so that would embark on building houses for sale through the unionable members. So that would be a company within the union, and they did that. It was called the Company of the Civil Servants Union, and they started buying plots in big towns. Of course, Nairobi as capital starting. And they decided to have a project where they would build houses, estates of senior staff and junior staff. And I applied for the senior, though in actual fact I was not qualified. But to qualify, I had to involve one of my brothers, the third floor, not the one who followed Bima, the third from me. He was an executive wherever he was working, and I joined him, and we qualified, and I was allocated a house. We deposited. The houses were to be built in Langatang, and that's where I'm living currently. So that was in 1977. So in 1978, the founder president passed on, and then incoming president had a team of advisors who are not very comfortable with the kitchen cabinet of the already dead president, and therefore they antagonized them by disorganizing, and advised the new president to deregister the big union of civil servants, saying that it belonged to a clique that was being brought up by the followers of the former president. And therefore, it was disbanded, and a few people were appointed to take care of the company that was doing the houses. There was quite a disorganization, so it went for 4 years without the allocation of the houses, without knowing even the state. And the people who were put in charge were from different places, and they actually disorganized and misappropriated all that money that was set to build this. The chairman, Kimani Wanyoike, had visited many countries soliciting for funds to do this, one of which was Israel. And the Israel labor movement had agreed to help, and even to assist with the technicians to come and help in the project. And the pilot one was set. They would even bring some materials and bring their stuff. But there were some conditions that the company to be contracted to do the job was to be theirs. Therefore, the company that was contracted was Israel company, known as Sorebonne. And those who advised the new president told him that all these had some connections that would destabilize his status. Therefore, he dismantled the company. And we, who had already deposited in the company, were at a loss.
What would you say about those allegations?
I would not like to say anything because they were unfounded. It is only that that clique did not fare well with those who were close to the president because they felt as if they were left out. And the clique within the president's kitchen and line, I think were advantaged, more advantaged. There are a lot of lady glubbing and other things like that, and they were better placed. So those who were not for that felt left out, and therefore they used this to punish those who they thought were closer to the former president, and therefore they wanted to fill that space.
Also, you talked about Jomo Kenyatta dying in 1978 and Moi picking up from where Mr. Jomo left. How would you say that? How would you put it? Okay. How would you say that? Okay. What was the overall feeling that was there during that transition?
During transition, it was it was not chaotic, but it was a sad moment because you reckon that President Kenyatta was the first president and did not just come during the elections. President Kenyatta was in the political scenes right from 1940s, when he went to Britain in 1940 or 1946, all those areas was there, and when he came back during the time of agitation to the citizens to try and rebel from the colonial government, and then start a Mau Mau movement, all that, and then he was seen as the head of the Mau Mau and head of the movement. So he was known as a super person. Even the upcoming people see him as a superman, and they did not comprehend as to how Kenyatta was. And so nobody would think about his death. And there are some people who were in the politics and mentioned about that. In case the president died, what would happen? They wanted to rectify some areas, and they were told never to mention that. It was made criminal to talk about that, and even treasonable to talk about death of a president. So among those who were talking about that, and they felt they were so close to the colonialists and did not want to belong to that elite group that was with the president, are the ones now who joined the new president and came to his help and told him how to somehow disarm, in quotes, those who are close to the president so that he can survive in his new job. And among them is to take away the privileges that they were given, take away the senior positions they were having, take away anything that they felt as would pose threat to the new government. And that's what happened. So the death of our old president was a big, big blow to the country, and an ordinary Mwananchi felt as if there was a big, big hollow. They didn't know how to fill it. They didn't know who would take the new leadership, and they did not even imagine how world will run it, because Kenyatta was so authoritative and was seen as such.
Would you say that that's when Kenya started losing being organized? That's when chaos started?
Not really, but there was a disillusionment from those who are in the senior positions, and now they were started being shaded off, and others were coming to take over. Many privileges that they enjoyed were taken off from them, so they were definitely not happy. And some of them lost even the job, the senior jobs. During Kenyatta times, the senior officials within the government and the close there were having free vehicles and big vehicles with the public number, and they would have their drivers and they would have the vehicles at their disposal and get them to their homes. So they didn't bother about buying themselves big vehicles. But immediately after that death and after the advice from that big link that now joined the new president in an advisory status, now they wanted to outdo their former colleagues whom they thought enjoyed privileges and closeness to the former president. So they advised the president to control the vehicles, have a government number in the vehicles, have pools where they would be stored overnight after the work, and then the officers would resume normal, go to their places and use their vehicles. Many of them didn't have good vehicles. And immediately after that, it went down that way and up to even losing their jobs. And some of them who had trained themselves on taking a lot of joy rides and misappropriating a lot, buying tracts of lands up country and in European, former European settled areas, just for prestigious purposes, to be visiting there on weekends, to go and have parties and this and that. Now they will not make it, and they lost jobs. And it is after that. Every cloud has a silver linings, as they so say. So they had it very rough to start with, to familiarize without the big vehicles they had, and later on to have lost their jobs. And so for them to survive and to keep afloat, they sold some of the properties they had acquired just for prestigious purposes. They started building satellite towns like Githurai, Gong, Thika, Ruiru, and others, and even areas of Athi River. They started buying properties and building. And before long, they found out that they would make much more than employment, and they became tycoons more. And it is still the same who formed the group that are now known as cartels, who control the government because of their wealth and financial capital and authority. So they did not all sink. Some of them even went higher. But now, not within the government, but as cartels, and they knew the movement of they could control with the ties and with the strings. They could pull the strings within the government, yeah, and control from afar and do all this. And that's when corruption became rampant. And it has not gone down. The people who know the government, people who are able, people who are in it and are out, the people who are having money and can influence anybody, and they can buy anything, can buy anybody within the authority. It went out of touch and out of control. And I'm sorry to say, up to now, it is within those quotas. It is not controlled yet.
So that's when cartels in Nairobi, cartels in the government started forming.
The big cartels, that's when they came in. And why they became so successful is because many of those are those who were denied their positions, and their positions were taken others, but they knew the operations of the government, and therefore they knew where to go, where to hit, and where to operate, and who to look for. And since they had started making money by the investments they had made here and there, by building houses, and though they were getting salaries of about 50,000, that was a lot of money. Now they would make 300,000.
At that time, someone was making 300,000 at that time when?
No, there are no 300. I'm telling you, the salaries were about 50,000 highest down those times. And when they went out eventually, and they were sacked, gradually shaded off from the government. And to survive, they started, though low, they started making properties and building houses, and they found there was money. So from the 50 that they were making from the salaries, now they could make about 300 or more, up to about 1 million from the investments they made. Now they became controllers, though out of the government, but with their hands still in it, with the strings, and they could pull strings the way they wanted. Those are the cartels we are talking about. In 1979, I moved to, I was transferred to Mombasa. Already I had acquired the house, though things were difficult. As I had started explaining, I was still a little influential. We got the houses, but now the new authority that was handling the houses, the union was no more there. Only the company that was owned by the union and was not being run by the original officials who were appointed by the union, but now the government, picking from Ministry of Labor, Ministry of Works, from the City Council, and from wherever they were appointed people by the president. And they did not want to pay even the builder, the contractor. The contractor tried to ask for the payment of whatever he had done, and was humiliated, was even threatened, and he had to run away from the country and abandon the project. Because when he took them to court, I think he got some threatening bits, and he felt unsafe. And since it was an Israeli group, they joined one of the senior ministers of the new government who had some relationship with the Israelis, and he teamed with some of the employees, and the company relocated from here to Nigeria. Nevertheless, they had taken the government to court to demand the money they had used to build the house to the state it was. It was not complete, but it was built to advantage. And then they appointed valuers to give them the state of the work they had done. It was established that they had done 55% of the project, and 45 was not done. And the houses remained in that state for 4 years. And in the 5th year is when they started writing letters to the applicants who had already qualified and deposited to go and get their houses. And they were made to sign through the company that they had hired as a law firm to process this. This was Kaplan and Stratton. And when they were invited, they were told, your house is ready, go to such and such an office, and the house will send you to those within the properties that were bought by the union, but now occupied by those who were appointed by the new president. And those who are there, I would only tell you to sign some papers. You sign some papers, you go back to the lawyers, and then they send you also back there to be shown the house. And the house that you'll be shown is the house that was 55% done, with open drainage, without many things done, and you'll be given the keys. When you find it unfit, already the silt has flown into the house, and there was a big silt, and a lot of forage had grown within the house. It was inhabitable. It was in a deplorable condition. Then we would go back to the lawyers, Kaplan and Stratton, and then you say, on how the house, can you get your money back? They say they had instructions that it is your house now, and if you want to dispose it off, you can sell it, but they have no way of refunding you the money. So it became a big problem, and we had to go to court. I was actively in the committee that formed now to try and fight the government and tell them to compensate us or complete the house as we had bought. Already whatever was borrowed through the bank by the union had continued accumulating interest. And so it was so heavy. Houses were supposed to have gone for 250,000, went for 220. We were told to add, and then we tried to add to get to that. And by the time you go in, already they had accumulated much, up to about 600,000. So they started advertising them for auction because we were not able to pay even the tenant purchase payment, because it had gone high because of this accumulation. And therefore we went to court. And for about 14 years we were in court. Some of the houses got sold, and it was really torturous. I happened to have been appointed appointed the chairman of the civil servants estate in Langata, and we hired lawyers. One of the law firms we had is Moite and Waruhiu, and when we went there, we registered the case, and the case went to court. And yes, the rumors went back to the government through the special branch and all the others that we are being represented by people who were against the government. Already the multi-party agitation had started, and one of the parties within the law firm, that is Moite, was a member of that agitation firm and was prominent. So we were demonized as belonging to that group. And that is even what I thought brought brought in my transfer. And by the fact that as a rule, one would not serve in a station for more than 2.5 years. I was supposed to do it within 2.5 years. But unfortunately, the 2.5 years turned out to be 7 years. So I remained in Mombasa for 7 years, having left my family in Nairobi. All the same, I tried to organize myself to visit my family fortnightly, and I did that. So I didn't lose touch. It opened up better, and I brought my family to Mombasa whenever schools closed. So my children enjoyed holidays that others didn't enjoy, although it was not my intention.
How is that unfortunate when you are actually now in a position to go to coast and have your kids come and join Mombasa? Was it unfortunate because now you weren't be able? Yeah.
It was it was not my doing, but it turned out not to be so harsh for me. Being away from home, I thought I would do something. I had already bought a piece of land somewhere, and I was developing. Now I'm away. My wife, who was working, was also somehow victimized, and was given night duties, which we will not condone, so she had to leave the employment. So I was the only breadwinner. And we had to do many things, because even while in Mombasa, I felt that I needed extra cash. And therefore, when I was off duty, because I was working at the airport and in shifts, I went around shops and I could find things that are not Nairobi, and I could buy them, bring to my wife to sell to the people around, the neighbors, and even the school. And we survived that way and made money. And since I had already got accommodation in town, by the time I was going there, as I many people thought I was of a class that I was really not in. And therefore, when I was transferred and I was looking for a house, some of the people who tried to help me are friends of my senior brother, my elder brother. One of them was a permanent secretary in the Ministry of Roads or Transport. And the kind of houses he was looking for is a house in Nyari and others. And I would not afford. I didn't want to sell them. I could not afford. But when I left my house here, fortunately, I got a friend who was a West African and had business in Nairobi, and was getting some properties in Mombasa through the port, and he would bring in. And so he had a house, and which he not occupied that often, and he had hired a big house. So he gave me a part of that, and I would pay him. And when he was there, I would make sure that I managed the area. It was called Adama. So that's how I went to Mombasa. It was an advantage to me. I had a big house at an affordable price. So I would afford to bring my people, and they stay with me. And so it continues. For the 7 years, it would have been very torturous. Other than now, the case and the problem I've had of meeting the prices of the court, I had a privilege of bringing my people for holidays all the time and enjoying what others did not enjoy.